my friends, welcome to the show. J.R. Dukes, once again at your service. Appreciate everybody joining me today. I just hit the buttons to make everything go. If you have any type of audio issues, please put it in the chat and let me know. All right, looks like we're doing good so far. Hello to everyone on the X platform. Of course, hello to all my friends on Twitch, and of course, right here at our home on YouTube. Alrighty, if you would like to join the chat today, feel free to do so. I'm going to go ahead and put in the super special code that you can follow. Just simply click on it. It's pretty easy right here with the StreamYard software, and you'll be invited to join, and you're feel free to ask any questions that you may have, so that if you'd like to comment, if you got a question you'd like to ask, or you want something answered, hey, no problem. That is what I'm here for. So get started now. J.R. Dukes, thank you for returning. If you have been with me before, it's always a pleasure when you take time to show up and hear what I have to say. If you are new, I'm all about ending indoctrination, understanding the world that we live in. I love to talk about politics, and frankly, I love to talk about anything related to the legal system. Our legal system is extremely important, and it is absolutely critical, folks, that we understand the world that we live in. And I got some breaking news today that I don't think is getting a lot of press coverage, but I think it is something that definitely needs to be talked about, and that's exactly what we're going to do here today. It looks like everything's in working order. So once again, thanks for joining. What we're going to be talking about today, that is a really huge story, as Donald Trump would say, and that is, we all remember sweet Letitia James, right? Oh, sweetness over there in New York City, unfortunately, the current attorney general there in New York City, the one that has so vigorously went after President Donald Trump. And of course, surprise, surprise, she may have legal issues of her own. Yes, that's absolutely correct. I got some stories online we're going to take a look at. As a matter of fact, President Donald Trump on his Truth Social page actually posted about this very story. And this one individual, he's a former white-collar crime investigator, and he has been digging on this particular story involving Letitia James. Frankly, my friends, if these allegations are true, Letitia James could herself be facing fraud, perjury, and removal from office. Hate to see that happen, of course, but that's exactly what is going on. In short, we're talking about Letitia James allegedly, I got to clarify, it's alleged until it's proven in a court of law, but it has to do with a Virginia property she labeled as her principal residence. Now, we're going to get in that in just a minute. Don't get too hung up on the words. I'm going to explain in detail exactly what it means to have a principal residence. So she says, hey, I'm going to be the Attorney General of the state of New York, but my principal residence on a sworn federal document stating that her principal residence is out of state. Yeah, that's a serious problem. Remember, they hammered our president, Donald Trump, hammered this man relentlessly for a whole list of reasons. But when you get right down to it, it was a bunch of technicalities, like how much does a particular property, like the one in Mar-a-Lago, actually appraise for, whether or not Donald Trump labeled that Stormy Daniels nonsense, whether or not those checks were actually a campaign contribution or a campaign expense, or if they were a legitimate business expense. So now it looks like people that live in glass houses, as this particular attorney general appears to live in, should not throw stones. Looks like it's going to come back and bite her, you know where. And one final point on this, you know what's real interesting about this? I have for a very long time talked about how these enemies, if you will, of Donald Trump, these detractors, seem like they always get themselves in trouble themselves when they go after President Donald Trump. This particular story involving Letitia James reminds me to a T of that former mayor, I believe her name was Kathleen Pugh. We talked about her on this program. And right now, ladies and gentlemen, for very similar actions that are now coming up against Letitia James, she is currently doing 3 years in the pen for basically some type of mortgage fraud, filing the documents incorrectly. Wouldn't that be absolutely hilarious if this turns out to hit her right back, you know where? I think it's just sweet justice, unfortunately. Don't get me wrong, I hate to see anybody in legal jeopardy or in trouble, but unfortunately, this is probably one time in my life I can honestly tell you unequivocally, Donald Trump has no choice. Donald Trump's allies have no choice to stop this lawfare, to give these people a taste of their own medicine, to show them what it's like when the shoe is on the other foot. We need to make sure that this lawfare is dead and that it never, never, never raises its ugly head again. It's really just that simple. And the only way, unfortunately, to achieve that is by what I just said. Again, feel free to comment any questions you might have, anything you want me to re-explain, put it in the comments below, or use the link to simply make a video call or a phone call into the show. Video, phone, whichever one you like to use is fine by me. I have no particular preference. So let's go ahead and let's dive into a few stories that I do want to go over. Let me put the first one up. We are all familiar with something called daylight savings time, right? Kind of hate that in a way. You have to get up and well, I mean, let's be straight up. When it is an extra hour being added to the clock, hey, we all love that. Who doesn't love an extra hour's sleep? Well, we're all getting kind of sick of it. And I will tell you that it seems like people talk about this particular subject. People get angry about it. They're tired of changing their clock, getting up at different times. And it seems like about a week after the time changes, people kind of forget about it. Well, this seems to have a little bit of a different flair right now because you have a lot of people talking about it on a bipartisan level. Yes, a bipartisan level, not just the president, but you have Democrat and Republicans who recently held hearings, and they are all up in arms and they want to put a stop to this particular matter, put a stop to this daylight savings time. It's ran its course. Hey, I appreciate Londo. Thank you for being here. MAGA. Yes, MAGA all the way. Thanks for tuning into the channel today. All right, I just want to cover this real quickly and just kind of hit the main points here. Now, we're going to watch this video for just a minute, but remember, this daylight savings time, depending on who you listen to, who you believe, started during World War II. It was a way to save money. It's a way to save electricity, to basically put more money in the local business pockets, because more daylight means more people are still active and shopping around. As a matter of fact, I heard one commentator estimate how many more swings of golf you could have per day if they had an extra hour of daylight on the fairway. So a lot of people talking about it. We'll see exactly how it all turns out. So I definitely want to talk about that particular story. And one other story, if we get time, I hope we get to it. Donald Trump is going after Mexico again on something that you may not be aware of. Did you know we have a treaty with Mexico all the way back from 1944, where Mexico is supposed to be pumping into the Rio Grande River so many millions gallons of water per year. Actually, I think they divided it up per quarter. And of course, Mexico, surprise, surprise, has not been living up to their obligations. And President Donald Trump, once again, is putting America first, is not going to tolerate this type of nonsense. We're going to talk about Donald Trump's tariffs and a few other things that are very important that we just kind of air it out, and I give you my 2 cents on exactly what's going on. Monica, thank you. I'm sorry, Monique, thank you for being here. Always appreciate having you in the chat. I hope I'm saying your name right. Yeah, it's Monique. Been listening to me for a long time. I talk with you back and forth a little bit on the chat, and I always enjoy your comments and your kind words and your feedback. Carol, thank you for being here. Carol Charters, Letitia James is always crying about something. Yes, she is. I have a Google alert set for her name, unfortunately, and I kind of just follow her around the internet to see exactly what she's doing or not doing, because it's been my experience. Probably a lot of you have had this experience when you see these people up screaming and going after people and engaging in just behavior that we know is not the kind of behavior we should be engaging in. These people generally, quite often, have skeletons in their own closet, if you know what I mean. And that's exactly what's coming to light right now. And we're going to get into that in just a minute. American Nana, thank you for being here. It's so nice to see you. Again, I apologize for being away this last month or so, month and a half. I just had a lot of stuff going on, family matters to take care of. Unfortunately, it's all getting resolved right now, and it is my pleasure to be back with each and every one of you. And American Nana, I appreciate you being here with me. It's very, very nice to see you too. Carol, thank you for being here. I'm a veteran of the USAF, Air Force, and I miss it a lot. Yes, I got you. I miss a lot of things. You know how that, you guys all know how that feels when you're away from something that you love, you enjoy doing, and then when you return, it's nothing short of euphoric. And again, I definitely enjoy these videos. I enjoy having a family. You know, it's just one of the many blessings we have in our lives now. I mean, you can frame your life any way you want to frame it. I choose to see things positive, and I choose to see things for what they are in the best light possible. And what a true blessing, 2025, being able to sit in front of a computer setup and being able to have a discussion, a talk, whatever, with my new YouTube family. It's definitely major blessings all the way around, and it's quite remarkable. You be online and be around the world seemingly instantaneously. So it's really good. American Anna, I thought about you and figured it was family. It always is. That's right. Thank you, American. Now you're always so kind, keeping in touch with me by text. By the way, folks, if you ever do need to reach out to me and I'm not live, it's not a problem. You have my email contact information scrolling below the screen right now. And I have a 24/7 number. You can simply text me. Send me a text. Love to talk with you. Talk to people all the time. Have prayer, consultation, whatever with folks. That's what I'm here for. I enjoy doing it. Happy to do it. Once again, thanks for all your kind words of support that I have received. Even recently, I mean, it's been going on for the last month and a half, and y'all have always been there with kind thoughts and kind words, and frankly, your prayers. I appreciate all that. All right, let's go ahead and dive into this for a second on this daylight savings times. Then we will return to the actual comments and the other stories I want to get into today. So let's go ahead and start knocking this out. Let's listen to this for just a second.
Let's talk about credibility. I'm Dr. Brett Osborne, a board-certified neurosurgeon with over
talk
20 years of experience in
medicine. All right, here he goes. Right.
Well, today is National Napping Day, which is much needed after springing forward 1 hour on Sunday. But some believe daylight saving time is a thing of the past. Sleep expert Ingrid Pruer and Virginia farmer John Boyd Jr. join me now. Good morning to you both. Happy National Napping Day. So Ingrid, help us out here. Yeah, a lot of people like the extra hour of daylight, which we have right now. But from a sleep expert perspective, what do you think about this? Are you on board?
Oh gosh, I wish it was done away with because of the effects that it actually causes in regards in opposing to the benefits that it actually gives us. There's no benefits. We are more exhausted. As it is, 1 in 3 people do not sleep already, and about 50 to 70 million people already have sleep disorders. We are even more exhausted, and it takes about 1 to 2 weeks, if not longer, for people to regulate with the time. So I actually think it's a waste of time, and it also increases the lack of productivity because we're so tired.
Yeah, you know, I totally agree with what she is saying on here, and the other guest. I'm crunched for time because I got several topics I want to talk about, so I want to cut to the chase on this daylight savings time. First of all, I'm interested in what each and every one of you think about this. Do you agree with this particular point of getting rid of daylight savings time, or would y'all rather have a continuation of exactly what's going on? And if we change it, would you rather have basically daylight savings time year round, or would you rather go back to the regular, the regular normal? Let's just call it the normal standard time zone. You know, I'm clear about what I want. I really don't care which way they go as far as a continuous daylight savings time, or if they go ahead and they keep it. But I just want them to do one way or the other. Either have normal time or have daylight savings time year round, where you can't change it. That is my opinion. I heard someone talk about, it was an article or something I was reading, but here's one interesting point. If you commit a criminal offense, God forbid you get in trouble criminally, and you are being sentenced for a particular crime, you do not want to be in front of a judge on the first Monday after the time goes forward. In other words, in March, we just adjusted our clocks. You do not want to be in front of a judge on that particular day. They did a study, and that is absolutely the worst day possible to receive a sentence for some type of crime. As you could imagine, it's troubling to hear news like that, but it turns out, surprise, surprise, judges have the same type of emotions pertaining to this as we do. So again, no big surprise as far as I'm concerned. Hopefully they get some movement on this and we're done with that. Another interesting story I want to talk about. We talk a lot about AI on this particular channel, and I think you guys are going to like this story. There was an individual. Let me go ahead and pull it up before I start talking about it. That way it's easier for me to talk about and we can all discuss it at the same time. So take a look at this story right here, and I'm going to blow this up nice and large so everybody can see it. There's this individual that was in front of this particular appellate case. This is the First Judicial Department, Supreme Court of the state of New York. This just happened Wednesday, March 26, 2025. This guy was representing himself, what they call pro se. Now, pro se is Latin, and basically it means by themselves. They are not represented by an attorney. You don't want to go to court and be pro se, but that's an entirely different subject for a lot of reasons, and we'll talk about that maybe some other day. But this guy was representing himself pro se, and he shows up at this appellate hearing. And listen, a lot of us use AI, especially nowadays, but he went ahead. This guy was pretty smart when you think about it. He went ahead and he made an avatar, a AI avatar, to present his argument to the judge. Now let's take a quick peek and let's see if the judges appreciated his efforts or if the judges were not too appreciative of that. Let's go ahead and listen to this. I think it's interesting. I've never seen it done quite in this manner. Here we go. Let me turn the sound correctly. We'll start
at the Wald versus Mass Mutual is being called out of turn, and the appellant has submitted a video for his argument. Okay, we will hear that video now.
May it please the court. I come here today a humble pro se before a panel of 5.
Okay, I want to stop for 1 second because I want to switch me to another side of the screen. This avatar just popped up. That is the avatar right below me on probably the right-hand side of the screen as you're looking at your phone or your gadget or whatnot. Here we go.
5 distinguished justices.
Is this, hold on. Is that counsel for the case?
I generated that.
I'm sorry?
I generated that. That is not.
Okay, it's kind of hard to hear, but I want you to know what's going on. You got the avatar in the lower right-hand side of the particular screen, and on the other side of the screen, you're going to see the pro se litigant right there. I believe it's the guy. I can't really tell the colors. You know, I have colorblind issues, but rest assured, he's on the left-hand side of the screen, so you kind of get an idea for it.
Not a real person.
Okay, it would have been nice to know that when you made your application. You did not tell me that, sir. I received the application. And you have appeared before this court and been able to testify verbally in the past. You have gone to my... The Wald versus...
I think that was interesting. You know, in all fairness, this guy claims that he did notify the judges that he was going to be effectively reading some type of video. They did not clarify, unfortunately, according to the judges on this panel, that it was going to be an actual avatar. But listen, you have to give the guy credit for thinking outside the box. I will tell you that it is becoming increasingly common for attorneys to simply use one of the many AI options out there when it comes to drafting an argument or frankly making any type of discovery papers. I don't want to get bogged down too much in the weeds on this, but now you can go to many different websites and you can simply type in whatever subject you might be interested in. For example, like homeowner associations, you can type it in and you could ask it to pull up all the case law pertaining to homeowner associations or any particular type of law that you're interested in. Amazing stuff, amazing times, and I have no doubt they're going to have to amend the various rules for what they call practice, the local rules for practice at each jurisdiction, because they're going to have more and more of this popping up. I think it's wonderful. I think it does allow a lot of people that choose to represent themselves pro se to have access to the information that they may need to put on an argument or conduct an argument in front of a court. This particular guy was allowed to read into the record exactly what his avatar was going to tell this particular tribunal. Again, this particular judge wasn't too happy about it, but I thought it deserved something for originality, whatever. I think it's pretty imaginative. And again, you're going to see more and more about this. American Nan is thanking Carol for her service and respect. Let's see. Joe Biden is a prime example of artificial intelligence. I think saying Joe Biden is an example that I don't disagree with you, but obviously artificial intelligence would do a much better job. But I don't want to get on that sidetrack. Thank you, Carol, for that comment. And let's see. Okay, good. We're all caught up. Let's go ahead and jump into my next subject for you guys. Interesting little spat that reared up the other day on CNN. I don't know about you guys. I am so sick of this woke stuff. Thank God President Trump's in office, and maybe he can start putting a stop to some of this nonsense. Let me just go ahead and show you this quick little clip. And what would you do if you were in Anderson's shoes? Anderson Cooper's his name. Obviously, he's one of the hosts, if you will, of the CNN show. Let's go and take a look at this quick clip. It won't take us long, but I wanted to review this because I got some comments I want to tell you about this. But here we go. Let's watch this clip, and then we are going to talk about it and review it together.
We're back with Senator Bernie Sanders. I want to introduce Grace Thomas. She's a local civil rights attorney. She's a Democrat. Grace?
They, them pronouns, actually. Thank you.
Oh.
Good evening, Senator Sanders. Polling and turnout data indicate that men of all racial demographics.
Okay, did you guys catch that? You have, I want to play it one more time because it's real quick. You have Anderson Cooper. He's having a town hall or whatever you want to call it with Bernie Sanders. A lot to talk about there, but I want to focus on this one particular comment. Admittedly, this attorney, she's an attorney apparently, she was very gentle. She was very gentle now with Anderson Cooper as far as correcting him. But you have a woman that's obviously a woman, and he corrects her in front of everyone. It's being televised live, as you can see, live on CNN. And he is telling Anderson that she wants to be addressed with they, them pronouns.
We're back with Senator Bernie Sanders. I want to introduce Grace Thomas. She's a local civil rights attorney. She's a Democrat. Grace?
They, them pronouns, actually. Thank you.
Oh.
Outrageous, isn't it? It almost seems like a circus. It seems like it's one of them things you almost can't believe it is real. I could just imagine if my maternal grandfather was alive today, what he would think about living in a world where we have this type of craziness and nonsense going on. Incidentally, I did put through ChatGPT. I asked it a question about these they, them pronouns. You have a lot of these woke libs, and what they will tell you is that, we have used words like they and them in the singular because obviously it's one woman as far as a she. And one of the things they always seem to quote is Shakespeare and the way he used it. And since I mentioned, I'll go ahead and take a second and show you this because I just got an interesting little point that I want to show you. I think you guys need this in your arsenal in case you ever find yourself in this situation and someone tries to correct you. I can't wait for them to hit me with some kind of garbage like this. But anyway, let's take a look at what ChatGPT says. I know you might not be able to read that exactly on your phone, but I'm going to highlight the basics here. So obviously this particular woman, instead of saying she is an attorney, she would want you to address her or talk to her as saying they are an attorney. Isn't that crazy? Absolutely crazy. So ChatGPT was telling me that there's a history of this, and this is what a lot of these woke liberal individuals will generally tell you as far as the English language is concerned, that allegedly, historically, from a historical perspective, a lot of times they or them was used in the singular. And I don't know about you, I've never heard of it used like that. So I wanted to check out their alleged evidence for myself and see if it's true or not. So on the computer, ChatGPT, I'm like, what are the historical facts pertaining to the subject we're talking about, right? Well, they quoted Shakespeare as saying the following, and this is in a Shakespeare play. The play is called A Comedy of Errors from 1594, and this is the quote: "There's not a man I met, but doth salute me as if I were their well-acquainted friend. All right. Now, I don't want to turn this into an English class, but the point is, and this is what I responded to on ChatGPT, there is, there is not a man. So that's clearly sounds singular, but the implication, what Shakespeare's meaning here is a man, i.e., in the whole world. So clearly, it's more than plural. And when I asked ChatGPT, I pointed that out. It says yes. That's actually a sharp observation. You're absolutely right to bring it up. This is the kind of critical thinking that a lot of the modern commentators miss when parroting. Shakespeare did it too, argument. And then, of course, it goes into breaking it down. So I appreciate ChatGPT giving me a compliment. But putting all that aside, I just want you, one of the things I love to talk about is indoctrination. I love to respond to some of the nonsense that is basically shoved down our throats all the time, starting with our kids and definitely every day in our lives with, let's just call it the legacy media. They just love to spin things. They love to give half truths. They love to lie. Let's just call it what it is. So remember that if and when you ever find yourself in a conversation or being corrected, or you hear one of these talking heads tell you that that's the way it's always been. It's been that way since Shakespeare. And bottom line is, my friends, absolutely false. Nothing true about that whatsoever. Let's talk about the tariffs for a second. I had a lot of comments and a lot of questions that came in from the video, I think it was 2 days ago now, on the Trump tariffs. And I've said many times on this program, don't ever, ever, ever bet against Donald Trump. I can honestly tell you, I don't think necessarily everything he's done is always correct, but I wouldn't bet against this man. I was talking earlier about all these people, let's just call them detractors, that come up against him. They end up getting in trouble themselves. Well, the same way on these tariffs. You're going to see all these people that are screaming and yelling from the mountaintops that things are terrible and Donald Trump's going to destroy the economy of America, if not the entire world. Don't believe it, folks. Donald Trump is doing exactly what he needs to do. We must grab this bull by the horn. We cannot allow our society to lose all of our manufacturing capacity simply because we have become basically fat, lazy, and we just start enjoying all of the fruits of having this cheap, trashy Chinese stuff coming in. We just can't allow it. And the reason, as we talked about 2 days ago, we can't allow it, these tariffs are not a tax. These tariffs are a shield. It's a shield to protect our nation and, by extension, my friends, the entire world. I think that's the clearest way to explain it. If someone mentions the tariffs to you as being a tax, just remember, they're actually a shield. We cannot allow ourselves to be vulnerable to China or any adversary. And let's be straight up about it. It looks like we very well may be heading to a war with China over Taiwan. Now, I don't want to get into whether that's a good idea or a bad idea to come to the defense of Taiwan. That's another subject we can talk about another day. But the reality is, why do we as the United States continue to allow all these different countries to charge us tariffs, to charge us extra fees, to rip off our American companies, to allow them to enter our markets, and we protect them, we protect their interests, yet in their markets, we're beholden completely to the CCP, the actual Chinese Communist Party. We cannot allow that to continue. Donald Trump is absolutely right. Thank God for Donald Trump, and I hope that he continues on this path and he continues staying strong and resilient and making sure that China and other bad actors do not get away with this. Remember, we won World War II in large part, in a very large part, because of our manufacturing capacity. It was literally a race between the Germans and the Americans as to who can build the most planes, the most tanks, the most bullets, frankly, faster, and get them out into the field where they are needed so the war could be prosecuted. Look at the Manhattan Project when it comes to the nuclear weapon. The United States beat Germany with that technology. And of course, if it went the other way, we would be living in a very different world today. Now, listen, none of us like to pay extra money, have extra, have our standard of living go down, whatever, because everything increases in cost. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but what I am saying is this is a tab that's been accumulating for way too long. We are currently in excess of $36 trillion in debt. I know we say words like that. I don't think the average person in our country has any idea what $36 trillion is and what $36 trillion looks like. That is an enormous amount of money. And we have to do everything in our power to get that tab paid down. We cannot allow this great country that God clearly has blessed. We have been blessed since our inception. It has not been a perfect road that we've been on. United States is definitely not perfect, ladies and gentlemen, but don't believe that noise. Don't believe that nonsense that you hear as certain individuals, especially these woke and wacky Democrats, talking about out there, saying that America is evil, we were founded on evil things and evil deeds and evil intentions, and the only way to fix America is basically to break it, destroy it, and start over. That is that's a can of you know what, and don't drink that Kool-Aid. It's just not true. America is a beautiful exception. We are a very blessed and exceptional country. Make no mistake about it. We have done more good around the entire world than any nation that's ever graced the face of this earth. And we need to continue in that regard. I can assure you, you've heard me say before on my program here, I bleed red, white, and blue. I love America. I want to see America better. I want to see certain things corrected. I want to make sure we go down the path that we need to go down so we can hand this great country off to our children and grandchildren in a much better shape than what it is right now, and frankly, in a better shape than even what we found. I mean, am I making sense on this? It's words that are very sincere and dear to me, and it's not just something that I just parrot. I really, really believe what I'm telling you, and I think it's with God's blessings that we are here, and I think it's with his blessings that we will be able to continue into the future. And I firmly believe God sent Donald Trump for a time such as this, as the Bible says. Don't let anyone else tell you anything different, ladies and gentlemen. Now, our adversaries, especially China, they are not going to be happy with Donald Trump doing what he's doing. He's finally using the clout, the might of the United States to do what needs to be done, to work things to our advantage. It's really just that simple. A country like China, I see them all over the place building buildings for other countries and working on ports and opening up ports for different countries. The difference is, ladies and gentlemen, is that China doesn't do it to make everything better, the host country and China or the world. They do it because they want to get something for themselves only. It's a way for them to basically export their wheel. Their goal is world domination. Don't make any mistake and understand that clearly. They're not interested in helping the whole of the world. They're interested in helping themselves. They are kind of like mafia-like, if you would, as far as the way they transact and conduct business. It's not a level playing field with these people, and we must make sure we never lose sight of this. So, of course, they are extremely mad and extremely hostile. Here's an article today from Breitbart. It says, China taunts Americans with AI-generated videos on how awful Chinese sweatshops are. I cannot play all these videos because some of them have music in there, and I don't want to have a copyright issue on YouTube, but we can still basically get the takeaway. Some of this is kind of funny, but we're going to talk about it ever so briefly here. The Chinese Communist Party is attacking Americans with AI-generated videos depicting them as overweight slobs working in sweatshops in the wake of President Trump introducing tariffs on China. In a desperate attempt to attack the United States, China appeared to inadvertently admit it forces its own people to slave away in sweatshops where workers make very low wages for long hours under poor very poor, by the way, working conditions by sharing AI-generated videos depicting Americans working those conditions and stuff. So let's take a look at a few of these here. Now, this particular one has a popular American song playing in the background. I think I can play it with, and mute the music. Let me make sure I can, and we'll just take a quick peek at it. All right, let's see if I can get it to play here. Here we go. Now, and remember, this is all AI generated. It says, "Make America Strong Again" in the back. Look at this. That shirt says Tesla USA. And you just have all these very bloated, overworked, lazy looking people working in a factory. That hat says "Made in California." These people have no shame, ladies and gentlemen. It goes on, the videos show AI generated Americans who the Chinese fantasize about all being overweight. Again, just more insults to America. And there's one here, too, where they even have Donald Trump and Elon Musk with J.D. Vance all working in a Nike sweatshop. I thought that was, listen, you have to give them a little bit of credit. They are being imaginative as far as their propaganda is concerned. But I just like, see, that's Donald Trump right there. Remember, these are AI generated images. So you don't expect them to be happy with America, specifically with Donald Trump. But I got a question for you. Why would we continue to do business with a country like China that, number one, this year alone, they have doubled their spending towards their military, and they have made it known very publicly and very clearly their intention is to take Taiwan back by force if necessary by the year 2027. It's clear that we are on a collision course with the Communist Chinese Party. And I, for the life of me, cannot understand why they would just simply allow that to continue. It's just more of the nonsense that we have allowed ourselves, to be victimized by. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I'm going to pull this next story up, and then I'm going to look at our comments. I see several comments coming in. So let me get into this next tree now. This is, of course, Truth Social. These are posts by President Donald Trump that were just made today or just came out, and we're going to get to them in just a second. All right, the comments here. Appreciate, by the way, all the comments. I appreciate the lively discussion. It's always good. All right, we have Above the Trees. Thanks for being here, Above the Trees. I thought it was about Letitia. Yeah. All right, American Anna. The older generations would think it was mental illness. Right on. Okay, Monique. I have trust in President Trump. Amen. Amen, Monique. Me and you think just alike on that. Definitely love President Donald Trump. And we all need to make sure we continue to pray for him, his family, his advisors, frankly, all of our leaders, because without trying to, sound hyperbolic about this, these are times right now that are it's just rich with potential pitfalls and problems that could happen. And we just need to make sure that our leaders are granted and given the wisdom that they need to get us through whatever it is that lies ahead. American Anna, the shift away from the Democratic Party gives me great hope that people are becoming wise to the danger of the Democratic Party and their agendas. Amen and amen to that. I think that is exactly what is going on. We're not going to dive into it deep today, but the current governor of Michigan, Gretchen Wilson, I believe is her name. She was at the White House at one of the events President Trump was having. I think he was signing some more executive orders, and she has been roasted online about her daring to show up at an event with President Trump. And President Trump is doing some very good things that she's very pleased about for her state of Michigan. We all know that Michigan is an automotive hub, at least it was. That was the heart of the American auto industry, Detroit, Michigan at one time. And of course, that is no longer the case because all of these cheap cars and cheap products are being flooded in to the United States. And of course, America cannot compete with that type of nonsense. So she's happy about that. She's trying to work with Republicans. And every time a Democrat tries to do that, they get hammered by the woke side of the party, which unfortunately, as American Nana is pointing out, is basically the entire party now. And unfortunately, that is a shame. The only good news about that is if the Democrats continue on this road that they're on, it's going to be a great year next year when the elections roll around again. You might see a much larger majority, specifically in the House of Representatives. And there's a chance, who knows, maybe we'll go over 60 votes in the U.S. Senate so we can avoid the filibuster rule and we can really get the Trump agenda passed and passed quickly. We'll have to see how that goes. But if they stick on that, that's what's going to happen. American Ass says they are trying to take over the Panama Canal. Yes, they are. And again, thank God for President Trump having the spine of steel, as one of his advisors said the other day, to make sure that that does not happen. I believe they're in the process right now of putting together another agreement, whatever the terminology is that they're going to use, where the United States is basically going to have a military presence at the Panama Canal to make sure China is not in there. The way I understand it, the current president of Panama is very much so pro-America and pro-Trump. He does not want China there. However, he's facing a lot of pressure from within Panama and external pressure from China to basically lean more towards China. And that's very wise of President Trump to say, hey, we're going to be here to make sure this does not happen. And it starts by supporting the very pro-American regime that is in Panama as of right now. All right. Thank you for that comment, American Anna. Monique, can you imagine if Kamala Harris were president right now? I try not to think about that. But that is a very scary thought to have someone like Kamala Harris in office right now. I have personally talked to several individuals that actually voted for Kamala Harris, and I think they regretted voting for her. They see the things that are happening right now under President Donald Trump's leadership. They see the problems more clearly now, and I think, ladies and gentlemen, they're very well focused on helping President Trump. And I don't want to say they're switching to become Republicans, but one or two of them that I've talked to definitely see just how wacky the Democratic Party is. You know, the Democratic Party as it is now is something I would not recognize. My own maternal grandfather was definitely Democratic, but I can assure you he would not be a Democrat voter if he was alive today. The Democrats of today are not the Democrats of the 1990s, 1980s, definitely not earlier than that. No way, no sir, no how. And it's a very scary thing. I hope that they start getting leaders that rise up, that get that steel of spine I've been talking about and say, hey, we're not going to allow the left of our party to hijack this entire party. And if they continue to allow that to happen, they're going to continue to lose more and more elections, is what I believe. So, Monique, thank you for that comment. President Trump wants to bring jobs back to the U.S. before AI takes them over. Yeah. He definitely wants to bring jobs back. Let me make a real quick comment about the AI since Monique made that well-put comment. Folks, I'm old enough to remember back in the 80s. You know, I was fortunate enough that when the computers were coming out, I remember the Apple II, and I think it was, what was that one that had the graphics design? I remember the Commodore 64s and just some of the computers that were being released at that time. I consider that to be at the tip of the iceberg, if you will, as far as the computer revolution is concerned. And, so I'm fortunate enough to have that experience with the computers, but I clearly remember people all over the news saying, oh, it's the end of jobs. It's the end of the middle class. The computers are going to take over and do everything. There's always these fear mongers that show their heads when something new is happening, when something that is not normal or usual or something people are familiar with happens. People's normal reaction is to be scared, and there are a certain percentage of people that are all about fear mongering. They love to tell us that we need to be fearful and we need to revolt and we need to be uncomfortable. I'm just telling you, folks, don't live that way. This AI is going to be a great thing, a wonderful thing. Yes, some jobs will be replaced. That's just the way it is. You know, I think I heard in a movie one time that they were talking about some of the whips they use for buggies. Like I'm sure the guy that owned the company that made the last buggy whip for getting that carriage to move, I'm sure he made the best buggy whip ever made on earth. I'm sure his product was primo. But things change. We don't ride around in horse carriages anymore. We have cars and different ways of getting around, and this is going to be the way it's going to be. Other things are going to be available for regular humans, if you will, to do. But I just wouldn't worry about the AI. People are always going to be needed for jobs. I might make a video in the future as to how I see the future with AI, and it may surprise you some of the things I think is going to happen. But trust me, it's going to be okay. So that's just my 2 cents on it. Please don't be sitting around worrying about that right there. So thanks, Monique, for that comment. President of the UAW supported. Yes, he is. They are all very happy with President Trump, and they are happy that he's doing what he's doing, as Gretchen Wilson is also. So, all right, P. Hacker, Hackerman, thank you for being here. All the Democrats care about his votes and money. Unfortunately, I have to agree with that. It seems to me all they are, I would word it this way, Hankerman, is I would say that the Democrats, at least the leadership of the Democrats, all they are interested in is pursuing and making sure their ideology is put into law. They want the country to operate according to the way they see the world, the way they think people should act, be, see, do, whatever. Unfortunate, but that's just kind of the way it is. Rosemary Fier, thank you for being here. Always a pleasure to have Rosemary in the chat. Thank you again, everybody who has taken time to tune in with us today. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Dukes feed. Specifically, we're going to be on True Social, just taking a look at some of the recent posts by President Donald Trump. We need to keep somewhat of a daily account of exactly what President Donald Trump is doing. He seems like he's always got something going on. This man definitely knows how to stay in the news, doesn't he? He definitely knows how to advertise himself. And I think that is another fantastic thing that I love about President Donald Trump. And y'all may or may not remember this. I've made it very clear that when Donald Trump first ran for office back in 2016, I was not a Donald Trump fan. I know that may shock a lot of you. I just never really liked the guy. At the time, that's what I thought about him. The only thing positive I would say about him was apparently somehow, some way, he's a good father, because he has raised some very well-balanced, intelligent, thriving, contributing members to society. I mean, his kids seem like they're flourishing. You got to give the man props for that. But that's all that I thought about when I thought of Donald Trump. Now, of course, my opinion once he got into office drastically changed in a pro-Trump way, if you will. But my feelings towards President Trump definitely changed once I saw what a good job he was doing. And I think I think everybody has a right to have their own Trump evolution. I didn't have derangement syndrome. It was not like that at all. It just, I didn't think he was the man for the job. And of course, I was wrong, and I am very glad that I was wrong. So, all right, continuing on. It says, this is Donald Trump from about 5 hours ago. Trump's first 3 cabinet meetings feature more press questions and answers than all of Biden's press conferences. Isn't that true? I thought that was an interesting way that he put that. I mean, amen to that, right? Now, for time reason, I want to cut through and show you the main things I wanted to point out here. There was 1 or 2 little things that were interesting. Now, this is going to be the main story that I want to drill down into. First of all, here's the thing on Mexico I was just telling you all about. Mexico owes Texas 1.3 million acre feet of water under the 1944 water treaty, but Mexico is unfortunately violating their treaty obligation. This is very unfair, and it's hurting our South Texas farmers very badly. Last year, the only sugar mill in Texas closed because Mexico has been stealing the water from Texas farmer Ted Cruz. We all know Senator Ted Cruz of Texas has been leading to fight to get South Texas the water it is owed. But Sleepy Joe refused to lift a finger to help the farmers. All right. I'm going to get into that. It might be during my next live, but the very important story, I have not heard anybody reporting on it, but it definitely needs to be talked about. And that is something I'm definitely going to be following. So getting into the main story today that I think is going to have a lot more press conference and hopefully the days, if not the weeks to come, has to do with Attorney General Letitia James. And even here it is right here. Even the president himself was talking about this today. This is Donald Trump's post. It says exclusive, New York Attorney General Letitia James declares Virginia home her principal residence. Now, this is put this particular website, White Collar Crime. I think I referenced it in the caption. You'll have to take a look and tell me. Let me go ahead and switch over to this here. This guy is a former fraud investigator. I think I can share my screen here with you, and we can take a look at this together. Okay, so this guy is a former fraud investigator, and he's come up with a series of these articles, and he's been drilling very deeply into sweet Letitia James to see exactly what the problem is with her and what she is doing. So Sammy Antar is a former certified public accountant whose career trajectory took a remarkable turn from a proprietor to investigator of financial fraud. Interesting, right? So he was the chief financial officer of Crazy Eddie, a major consumer electronics chain. Y'all remember that? Crazy Eddie? Crazy Eddie, I think, ended up with a lot of criminal problems, but his commercials were everywhere. If anybody remembers that, please put in the comments. I'm curious if I'm the only one that remembers old Crazy Eddie is. Yeah, I think you can look it up on YouTube after this broadcast, of course, and just type in Crazy Eddie commercial and see what I'm talking about. So apparently he was working with him way back in the day. It's just interesting. And I'll continue to follow his story. So here is the main story that I want to drill down on with sweet Letitia James. She may have some serious culpability with this. I think she could possibly lose her office if it's true. If it's true, she definitely is going to lose her seat as the New York Attorney General. And I think she has a reasonable chance of facing some type of what we call white collar crime. It's definitely fraud. As I said earlier in one of my earlier comments, the former mayor, I believe it was of Pittsburgh, her name was Kathleen Pullman. She was the one that was always attacking President Donald Trump in his first term. She ended up getting investigated herself, and they found these clear financial crimes that she was committing, very similar to what this New York Attorney General is being accused of by this particular investigator. And you can imagine if President Donald Trump is reposting it on True Social, you can bet Letitia James has to be very worried. So before I read into this article, let me take a sip of my tea and let me check your comments right here. Make sure I catch up on that. Kevin, thank you for being here. Dude, this term is looking like the last term. He's doing a lot of that he said he was going to do, but he's still controlled by Israel. Well, we'll see, Kevin. I don't know if I agree with that, my friend, but I don't see anything wrong with being friends with Israel. If you read the Bible, it says God blesses those who bless Israel. Now, I wouldn't say that's the main reason to be pro-Israeli, but it doesn't hurt. I think our interests align with Israel's interest a lot. American Anna, power and stealing America and her money. Yeah, he is the best troll, American Anna. President Trump definitely knows what he's doing, right? All right, looking good. Let me see if I see anything else. FJB, you've been here a long time. Thank you. I'm late to the party. FJB, you may be late. It's always a pleasure to have you in the conversation, my friend. You've been here a long time also. All right, my friend Kevin said we need to start seeing some accountability for corruption and just outright legal insider trading. Yeah, that Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer. Yeah, I agree with all that. They're all running free. And Maxine Waters. I have no doubt, Kevin, at least in my mind, you guys tell me if you agree or disagree, I have no doubt that AG Pam Bondi, along with the person she put in charge of the head of New Jersey? I forgot her exact title, but she's like the U.S. attorney that oversees the region of New Jersey, which of course gets a lot of action through there, if you would. And Alina Alba, one of Donald Trump's main attorneys. Between the two of them, these two ladies are pit bulls. They're very intelligent, not to mention they're both very attractive, but they are two sharp, extremely intelligent, smart women. You add Kash Patel to the mix, not a doubt in my mind that all of these enemies of Donald Trump, if you will, all these people that have committed this malfeasance against the United States, look, the way I see it is all these bad actors, Judge Engeron, Letitia James, possibly Jack Smith, definitely anybody associated with this lawfare, and specifically Nathan Wade, the current DA, unfortunately, Fannie Willis, sweet Fannie Willis, that we have talked about ad nauseum on this program. These are individuals, in my mind, that are going to be facing some kind of criminal culpability at some point. I don't know exactly what or when it's going to happen, but clearly it's going to happen. With Fannie Willis and Nathan Wade, the easiest thing to prove there, in my estimation, is going to be some type of perjury. They have stated repeatedly under oath that they had no relationship or did not have any relationship prior to approximately, was it November 1st, November 6th of 2020, I think it was 2021, right at the time that Fannie Willis hired him to start this investigation into now President Donald Trump. And there's so many other layers there. Clearly, this is stuff that can be proven in a court of law, and I have no doubt, Kevin, that there's going to be accountability, to use your word. I think you're absolutely correct, Carol. It amazes me how these Democrats become so rich on a government paycheck. Yeah, it is amazing. You see so many of these politicians. They started as, let's just say, normal people when they took office, and when they leave office, they're multimillionaires. It is troubling. And don't get me wrong, I don't have a problem with people making money. I think making money is just as American as apple pie. I do have questions of how they got that money. Very, very concerning. Kevin, Trump is controlled by Israel, and they don't want America to be great again. Well, I don't know if I agree with that, but that's all right, Kevin. You don't have to agree with everything I say or think, and vice versa. So let me check, see if there's anything else out here. Yes, Monique, I remember Gen X here. Absolutely, Monique. You remember, we're talking about the computers and all the other stuff, Crazy Eddie. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff we all remember being Gen X. And I think, I'm a Gen X too. That's right. I was born in 1969. I think that's clearly Gen X. All right, American Nana, big farmer and inside trading. Now finding out about funneling taxpayers' money through fake account. Yeah, that USAID, boy, what a ripoff. What a complete ripoff. And I'm glad that they took action. What do you think is going on with these Democrats? How are they going to ever justify or explain away the fact that they have came out against and are continuing their crusade against Elon Musk and his team? That, I mean, how are you against rooting out fraud, corruption? What's the other thing they say? Fraud, corruption, just any type of stealing, any type of something that's not needed. How can you be against that? I just don't understand that. It's just crazy. But that's the Democratic Party. Unfortunately, they've all came to this craziness. Right, Mark? She wants to throw rocks, then hide her hands. Yes, she does, and I don't think that's going to be allowed. Hey, Matt, emotional week. Yes, it has been. Matt, thanks for being here, my friend. I don't think I've talked to you recently, but thanks for being here. You've always been a good supporter of the channel, and I appreciate having you here. An American Nana has a question for me. JR, do you think that the very old people controlling Social Security is another way of funneling money? I don't know exactly what you're talking about on there, American Nana, but these people that are coming out and saying that Donald Trump is going to do something to Social Security. Let me be very clear, folks. That is all lies. It's not even indoctrination. It's just gaslighting. It's just a lie. There's nothing he's doing to Social Security, nothing planned against Social Security except to get rid of any type of fraud or abuse. For example, there's been people that's still on the Social Security rolls that are 180 years old, something crazy. We all want that to be changed as far as Social Security goes. No, nobody wants Social Security to be ripped off, I guess, except for the Democrats. So don't be worried about that, American Anna, if you have any concerns like that at all. And Monique says Alina said she plans to file charges against the. Yeah, I heard that too. I think that's great. Why not? Why would you not? If as a normal person, if I took action against the government to basically circumvent the government trying to enforce laws or rules or whatever, and I was actively hiding the people, taking action that's contrary to what the law says, of course, I'd be on the hook for some type of serious criminal sanction. I mean, that's just common sense. And amen to that. I think that I don't know if you agree with that with Monique, but I think they should. I think they should go after it with everything they got. So fantastic. And then we have okay, comments are winding down, so we're going to jump into it. Yes, and these people that are wealthy, they pay a lot of taxes. Make no mistake about it. And if they're not paying taxes in, the government has it that way in the law because they want wealthy people to be reinvesting the money they earn. So they have tax incentives to try to make sure that that is the case. In other words, the government generally taxes behavior that they want to discourage, and they don't tax behavior they want to encourage. And that's the reason why business people, landlords get a lot of different tax incentives because, for example, in the case of landlords, it's the government wants to encourage affordable places for people to live. So again, we'll drill on that at another time if anybody's got any questions on that. But don't believe that nonsense that the rich do not pay their fair share. That's a complete pile of you know what. And again, I encourage everyone not to drink that Kool-Aid. All right, let's get to the story because Lord willing, I will be talking about this ad nauseum in the future, and maybe this is the first time you're hearing about it. So let's talk about it because I do have a few points that I want to explain on this here. All right, exclusive New York Attorney General. Again, this is whitecollarfraud.com. Feel free to check it out yourself and to follow that particular website. I like it. I think this guy's got a good website. I was playing around with it today. Exclusive New York Attorney General Letitia James declares her Virginia home her principal residence. Now, I want to qualify that here in a minute and explain that a little bit more. Letitia James, New York's Attorney General, has built her career on exposing deception, but a quiet real estate transaction in Norfolk, Virginia, carried out weeks, just weeks before the Trump fraud trial. Remember, this is the Attorney General that was aiding, if you would, all these lawfare against President Trump. So just 1 week before the Trump fraud trial, she championed this, is what they're saying, now raises serious questions about her own compliance with New York law. So this is where she's in trouble. A declaration buried in legal filing states her intent to make for a Virginia house her principal residence. It says, I hereby declare that I intend to occupy this property as my principal residence. Now, a lot of you may be thinking, so what? Can't you have more than one residence? Yes, you can have as many residents on this earth that you want. Very normal. I live in Florida. A lot of people that we refer to as snowbirds, they come from Canada, Michigan, New York, wherever, and they come to Florida during the winter months and they maintain a second residence right here in my home state of Florida. Not a problem there. But you can only have what's called, and in this particular terminology, they're calling at her principal residence. Now, this is the key, the principal residence. Now, I have always called a principal residence something called a domicile. A domicile is something where, okay, you're telling the world, I legally am of this place. This is where I plant my flag, so to speak. Here's the key. You can only have one domicile at a time in the entire world, period. So remember that. And if you say that, hey, and one last thing, principal resident and domicile are the same thing. They're different words, obviously, but it means exactly the same thing. The problem for her is if they can prove that she lied under oath, she faces a lot of problems as a result of this. So let's drill into this. Those words appear in black and white in a Pacific Power of Attorney signed by James and filed in Norfolk, Virginia on August 17th, 2023, authorizing her relative Shamice Thompson Hairston to act on her behalf in a transaction that included the declaration. They were not written by a lawyer acting on James's behalf. They were her words, her intent, her signature. This signed power of attorney is a smoking gun on its own, completely separate from how the mortgage might be interpreted. Now, see, the mortgage is going to be another issue, and he's going to explain that here. It stands as a clear declaration of intent from a sitting New York Attorney General to establish principal residency in another state. While joint ownership arrangements sometimes involve owners with different primary residence, this case is different. The declaration and the power of attorney specifically states James's intention to make the property her principal residence. Remember, principal AI is your domicile. And the mortgage, here's the key right here. The mortgage require both borrowers to establish residency. That raises questions about whether such a declaration was made primarily to secure preferential mortgage terms. The irony here, folks, cannot be overstated. Remember, this is the same Letitia James that was hammering President Donald Trump that he's a criminal and he lied when he appraised Trump Tower and his other properties. Remember her on all these newscasts she's on all the time? Donald Trump ripped off taxpayers. He ripped off the system. He intentionally misled on what he assessed the value of his property to be. Boom. If true, she's engaging in the same and or similar types of behavior. It continues. Importantly, this is not an isolated incident. Discrepancy in James's mortgage filings appear to follow a longer-term pattern, raising broader questions about disclosure consistency. If James never intended to make the Norfolk property her principal residence, despite signing a document explicitly stating that intention, the declaration may constitute misrepresentation under federal fraud statute. Bingo. That's exactly what Bondi and frankly Donald Trump would want, is some way to hammer her in a federal court type setting. And there's no easier way to do that than when you're dealing with things across state lines, or in this particular instance, you're dealing with mortgaged property and federal loan documents. I've seen many, many people during my lifetime go to prison, go to jail because of some type of crime involving some type of federal form or some type of federal disclosure, or frankly lying under oath, which is basically what it is to sign one of these documents with the intent of fraud, as Ms. James is accused here. And this declaration came at a remarkable moment because on October 2nd, less than 7 weeks later, James would take to the courtroom steps in Manhattan to announce the start of her landmark civil fraud case against Donald Trump. So she's hammered Donald Trump for some type of fraud, some type of malfeasance involving real estate, and allegedly she's doing the same thing at the time she's engaging in this type of behavior. The trial would span months and dominate headlines. James would be in New York nearly every day. All right, and it goes into the facts here. The Virginia property at 604 Sterling Street was purchased for $240,000 with a $219,780 mortgage. The deed lists James and Thompson Harrison as co-owners, and it's titled as what they call joint tenancy with the right of survivorship as at common law, meaning both have equal ownership rights. It goes into the property, the description. It goes on. This creates a direct conflict with James's duty as a New York Attorney General, where she maintained an active public presence throughout this period. The timing could not be more problematic. At that very moment, she declared her intent to establish the Virginia residency. She was preparing for her most high-profile case in New York. So at the same time, she's serving as New York Attorney General. She is hammering Donald Trump, and at the same time, she's in New York doing what she did to President Donald Trump. All right, here's the legal requirements. This isn't simply a matter of having multiple homes. New York public officers under the law is unambiguous. In other words, it's very clear. No person shall be capable of holding civil office who shall not have reside in the states for a required period. And their state constitution continues. A resident of the state for 5 years immediately preceding the election. Ms. James has problems, ladies and gentlemen. Furthermore, public officers law mandates that an office becomes vacant when the office holder ceases to be an inhabitant of the state. So she's got problems with maintaining her office. And as a little teaser, I will be talking about in another video as to whether or not the case against President Donald Trump could, or should be dismissed as a result of Letitia James. If these allegations are true, she should never have been, she did not qualify to be the Attorney General of the state of New York. So kind of her actions were illegal as a result. You follow my thinking right there? We're going to talk about what the implications are as far as Donald Trump's case is concerned, and I got a lot to say about that. I think it's going to be an interesting discussion. I love talking about that type of stuff, as y'all know. All right, the consequences under New York law are immediate and severe. When an office holder moves outside the required jurisdiction, they can no longer hold that position. Period. Here is the exact quote. When an office holder removes his residence from the territory limits required by statute, the office is rendered vacant. And we all know what that means. If James declared Virginia as her principal residence, which the power of attorney clearly shows was her intention. Remember, she signed that power of attorney being a document that I'm going to live in this house in Virginia. She may have triggered an automatic vacancy in the office of Attorney General under New York law. When she signed that power of attorney, that's the same thing as a resignation letter at her position as the Attorney General in and for the state of New York, potentially invalidating her authority during the very period she was prosecuting her highest profile case. And of course, we're talking about the case of President Donald Trump. Interesting. Financial considerations. Beyond the legal implication, there are also financial questions surrounding this transaction. And this is important. Standard mortgage requirements for owner-occupied properties, such as those documented in federal housing forms, typically offer substantially lower interest rates and investment properties. Rather than investment properties, often 0.5 to 3/4 percentage points less, translating into thousands in savings on a $219,000 mortgage. This is exactly one of the things she went after President Donald Trump for. I remember her clearly being in front of a camera, just talking about how terrible this was that Donald Trump engaged in these type of crimes. In her estimation, was basically was saying, listen, Donald Trump lied as to the value of his potential properties, and he lied about his financial status and what he was capable of, and he did all of this in part to get lower interest rates on loans he was taking out against his properties. Effectively, ladies and gentlemen, she's doing the same thing. Interesting, eh? The financial motivation behind claiming a property as a primary resident is significant and raises troubling questions about whether this declaration was made for financial benefit rather than reflecting actual living arrangement. It's just like right here in Florida. I'm sure your state probably has something similar to it. If I tell the county that I live in that, hey, this is my domicile, this is my home. In Florida, we call it our homestead. There's two different types of homestead, so I don't want to get that confused. In the state of Florida, the homestead I'm talking about is for tax purposes. When I come forward and say, hey, this is my domicile, I get significant tax advantages. As a matter of fact, my taxes effectively freeze at the time I buy the property. And then Florida has another law that's actually in the Constitution, the state Constitution I'm talking about, that freezes. It's called Save Our Homes Amendment. And it freezes the property tax I pay. It can go up no more than I think it's 3% a year versus what the actual value of the house went up. It's 3% a year or whichever is lower. So the long story short is I have substantial tax advantages living in my primary residence here, aka domicile, aka homestead. I hope that's clear enough right there. Disclosure questions. The pattern of questionable documentation extends to James's official disclosures. So she has a huge history of committing these crimes, according to this guy at the whitecollarfraud.com website here. Why does it matter? As it goes, the Attorney General holds a unique position of public trust. James won a $350 million verdict against Trump for misrepresentations in property valuations. The central claim in that case that Trump misrepresented property values and usage for financial gain bears a troubling similarity to the questions now surrounding James's own real estate declarations. Boom, exactly what we have been talking about. These questions take on even greater weight considering James has already registered a campaign committee. So she's talking about her future campaign in 2026. She has a lot of serious problems, ladies and gentlemen, with this whole situation. I wanted to mention to you one last thing on this particular subject. If these allegations are true, I was checking around to see exactly what would she be facing potentially, and exactly what kind of culpability she's looking at. Let's go ahead and put it that way. So I ran this through the not just ChatGPT and some of the other AIs, but I went directly to the statutes, if you will, for California. And I just thought it's interesting what she's facing, which are substantial potential problems, potential legal implications here. Residency, some kind of residence fraud, mortgage fraud, financial disclosure fraud. And let's see if I put the penalties down here, because it's interesting to see exactly what she faces. It depends on the charge and exactly what they charge you with. That always depends upon what the potential range in prison could be. But ladies and gentlemen, on some of these charges, she could potentially be facing up to 30 years in prison, depending on, again, now what she if she's charged, what she's charged with, how they charge it. And remember, this Kathleen Pugh, P-U-G-H, the former mayor of Baltimore, she was the mayor of Baltimore. She currently is serving a 3-year sentence in the federal pen, sentenced to 3 years in federal prison in 2020, 2021. So she might be released. I'll have to double verify that. But she spent on something very similar. She was charged with wire fraud, conspiracy to defraud the U.S., tax evasion, and concealment of income from book details. Wow. That's pretty serious, ain't it? I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of that, would you guys? I know I sure wouldn't. All right, let me check, see if we got any questions here as we conclude this particular story here. All right. I appreciate, by the way, everybody contributing and getting in on this conversation right here. I think this is great here. All right. And yeah, okay. I think I got most of the questions. I do appreciate American Anna, all your questions, and Monique, you guys are great. Yeah, this is one thing we're going to be talking about, American Anna, is this going to make her time as AG null and void? We'll see. Stay tuned. I will be able to answer that in detail for you, and I'll give you a little bit of a hint. Possibly. It definitely possibly could. I doubt it would result in an immediate, complete, wiping of the record, so to speak, but it could cause problems, and you can bet on this. You can bet President Donald Trump would definitely use that in court as one of the many reasons to appeal. To appeal whatever the verdict was, whatever. It's going to be really great to watch and see exactly how all this transpires and exactly what she's charged with at the end. And remember, this is just one of many things on pertaining to Letitia James that they're talking about. This particular website, this guy stays up on top of this. He obviously likes to get in here and dig around on this stuff right here. He's not playing around. He's going for the jugular, and he's pouring through these documents. I mean, this guy, he did a very good job putting all this together. It's probably the best way to put all that. So, all right, that looks pretty good. Any last questions right here? Monique says, I saw that one of her charges passed statute of limitations. Yeah, you know what? That might be the case. But remember this: just like was that Alvin Bragg, Attorney General James, and specifically Alvin Bragg, what did he do? He found a way to take the statute of limitations and extend it. Remember, he took dead misdemeanors. The charge was some type of failure to keep your books correctly, so some type of mislabeling on the records. The statute of limitations passed, but what he did is he wrapped it into the federal law pertaining to election and election fraud, and he used those as the basis. Basically, he took dead misdemeanor charges, gave them life again, which circumvented the statute of limitations. And of course, as we all know, President Trump was convicted on these, 34 charges. And if you're interested, you know what the 34 charges are for? Each one is a separate check that President Trump wrote back to Stormy Daniels. Technically, he gave it to, Michael Cohen, and then he gave it to Stormy Daniels. But that was reason why it was 34 separate felonies. Someone asked earlier about President Trump, what would have happened if Kamala Harris was president? Let me tell you something. Not a doubt in my mind, ladies and gentlemen. Not a doubt in my mind. President Donald Trump, unfortunately, would be in prison right now today. Not a doubt in my mind. Sad as that sounds, there's no way that Judge Burchett was going to let Donald Trump, who at that time was convicted of 34 Class E felonies, 34 felonies, and he was admonished by the judge no less than 10 times and fined or scolded or whatever, 10 times. And then you add to that the words President Trump said about Judge Burchett. Not a doubt in my mind that judge was going to send him to Rikers Island. Anybody disagree with that? I'm curious, because my mind is very clear on that matter. And what about cashing her paychecks? What are you talking about there, American Anna? If you're talking about, I'm not sure whose paychecks you're talking about. If you're talking about with Stormy Daniels, there was no checks to cash. They were just written from President Trump to his lawyer, aka the fixer, Michael Cohen, and then he wrote the checks to Stormy Daniels. That was how they got that basis of 34 particular accounts right there. So, all right, my friends, we're going to land the plane right here. I appreciate everyone joining me today. If you haven't done so, please hit that thumbs up button and be sure to subscribe to the channel. That way you're informed anytime I go live or when I drop another video. If you have any questions, if you'd like to send me a text, please do so. I do appreciate hearing from each and every one of you. It's always a pleasure to be able to sit down and come into your life and have a discussion. It humbles my heart that you take time to tune in to hear what I have to say. So thank you so much for being part of our family right here at J.R. Dukes. I like to always say, my friends, keep that mind free, never give up. And until next time, I am J.R. Dukes.